Welcome to the BetterWallet podcast, a podcast where we talk to everyday people who have changed their lives through managing their money. We talk about their money journeys, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Welcome to the next episode of the BetterWallet podcast. As you guys know, the BetterWallet podcast is all about demystifying the topic of money and sharing powerful money stories. Today, we're going to talk about a really hot topic that, again, I'm starting to get a lot of questions from either students or people on my Instagram page asking about the topic of Roth IRAs, how to use them, the different tax benefits of Roth IRAs. So Roth IRAs, they're one of the parts of the tax code that I love the most. Frankly, the first time I learned about a Roth IRA, I think someone was talking about it on Oprah, and my mom, this is back when I was growing up, my mom talked to me about Roth IRA, and she was like, oh, I guess if you put money into a Roth IRA, it could grow over time, and then you have all this tax-free money. She was like, all you need to do is put in $1,000 and you're rich. Right? That's not how Roth IRAs work. Over time, I've learned that there's levels to it, right? There's a lot that you have to do in order to become rich from a Roth IRA. But in the grand scheme of things, when it comes down to the tax-free nature of a Roth IRA, that was true. So that was the first time I learned about Roth IRAs. But in general, you might be asking, okay, so what is it really? A Roth IRA is a tax vehicle. Think of a 401k, right? An IRA being an individual retirement account, which is very similar to a 401k that a lot of people who are listening probably have, where if you look at just a Roth IRA, you put the money, or just an IRA in general, you put your money in and you invest for retirement. Again, very similar to a 401k. Roth is a fancy way of saying that you put the money in after tax. The money grows tax-free. And then at 59.5, which the IRS makes up as they made up this number as being the age that you could take the money out and not be taxed on it, right? So the money goes in after tax, grows tax-free, and then you take the money out tax-free, right? So that is basically what a Roth is. So if you combine the two words, Roth being after tax, money grows tax-free, right? And then you take it out tax-free. An IRA, individual retirement account, or some people might say individual retirement arrangement, I think is a term that is more accurate. You're saving for retirement. So after tax, saving for retirement, Roth IRA, right? So just make sure we're on the same page with that. Now let's talk a little bit about the tax benefits of a Roth IRA beyond the one that I just told you, right? So saving for retirement after tax, the tax code gives you a lot of benefits when it comes to a Roth IRA, a lot of benefits people don't know all too much about. The first one is that the Roth IRA gives you more flexibility on how you can use the money, because a lot of times people say, okay, well, Mark, I know I'm investing for my retirement, but retirement can be 20, 30 years from now, sometimes even 40 years from now, depending on when you're starting to retire. So the question is always, when can I access this money, right? Do I have to wait until I'm 59 and a half, 60 years old? The answer is no. But what I want you to know is that the money that you put away for retirement should be used for retirement. The money you put away for college should be used for college, right? So you invest based off of your investing goals. So I say all that to say it's your money, right? But as the financial advisor that I used to be, I have to tell you that the money you put away for retirement, make sure you're using that for retirement, because the worst thing you can ever possibly do is use your retirement money for something else. Then when you actually get into retirement, you don't have enough money in order to pay for it, right? I tell you guys all the time, you cannot take a loan out for retirement. You can take a loan out for a mortgage, take a loan out for college, you can take a loan out for really anything. You cannot take a loan out for retirement. You don't want to get to the point where you don't have enough money because you use that money for something else. So I had to get that disclosure out there. But the IRS allows you to use that money before 59 and a half as long as you follow the rules, right? So the first rule that I want you guys to keep in mind is that at any time, and this is different from any other account that I can think of, at any time you can always withdraw your contributions tax-free. What do I mean by that? Let's say you have a Roth IRA, you put $10,000 of contributions into that Roth IRA, and the money grows, I don't know, you end up getting $2,000 on top of that 10,000. So you have $12,000 in your account, 2,000 happens to come from earnings, 10,000 comes from contributions. That $10,000 you can withdraw out at any time. And that is a fact, right? So let's say you're like, hey, I'm going to put money into a Roth IRA and I'm going to withdraw it the next day. You could do that. You could do that. Even if there's some earnings that were generated within that day, you could take the money out the next day. After the money settles and all that stuff, right? So that's one thing to keep in mind. So if you're ever in a pinch and you need to take the money out of the Roth IRA, you can do that, but only up to the contributions, right? So for example, if you have $10,000 in there, 2,000 happens to be earnings, and you take out 11,000, 10,000 of that will be tax-free. That $1,000 will not only be taxed, but there will also be a 10% penalty because likely you're not using it for a qualified expense, which we're going to talk about next, right? So you always have access to your contributions, or what they might call principal, being the money that you're putting into the Roth IRA. So that's one of the bigger tax benefits of the Roth IRA, is that you can avoid tax by just taking out your contributions. So the next big one is what I just kind of alluded to, is that the IRS gives you some wiggle room on the type of contribution or the type of withdrawals you can make out of your IRA. What do I mean by that? The IRS says, listen, if you put the money in and you get some earnings on the account, as long as it's 5 years after you make your first contribution and it's going towards a qualified expense, we're good. We're good. You don't have to pay that 10% penalty. You don't have to pay a 10% penalty. And you also don't need to pay taxes on the money that's coming out because you already paid taxes up front, right? So again, the IRS says, yo, I'm going to throw you a bone. I got you. You put the money in, use it for a qualified expense. After 5 years of making a contribution, you're good. Like, you can take the money out. So the type of expenses that are qualified include college education, medical expenses, and $10,000 towards your first principal residence. So let's break down each one of those three, because there's rules upon the rules. But if you follow the rules, you can actually get a lot of tax advantages. First one is college. So you can take the money out after 5 years and apply that to a qualified institution, very similar to a 529. But here's how it's different from a 529. So 529, you put the money in, the money grows tax-free, and you can take the money out tax-free as long as for a qualified institution. So they're very, very similar. The big difference is when you take the money out of a Roth IRA and apply it to college, the student aid office is going to look at a bigger percentage of that money versus the 529. So when you take money out of a Roth IRA, they're going to look at about 20% of that money and say, okay, well, they have the bread, they have the money already to apply this money to whoever's going off to school. So we don't need to give them as much. That's basically what they think with the Roth IRA. They're say, okay, well, they're taking out $1,000. We're going to look at 20% of that, and we're going to apply that to what they call the expected family contribution, and that lowers how much money they're going to give you when it comes to financial aid. With a 529, though, and why it might be a better vehicle to use for college expenses is because with a 529, they only look at 5.65%. 5.65. Which that means they're looking at 5.65 of the total amount that you already have invested for that college education, right? So in the grand scheme of things, if you're using a Roth IRA, you're comparing that to a 529. Though you might have money in a Roth IRA, you don't have money in the 529. The 529 is probably better than taking money out of your Roth IRA because you will be able to still get money from the government, right? And we do a lot for the government. We pay them taxes, right? They should be paying for a college education as much as possible, right? So our goal is to make sure that the expected family contribution is as low as possible, right? We want to make it as low as legally possible. So we're not going to shoot ourselves in the foot by using a Roth IRA, but you have the option after 5 years. So that's a big one. The second one that I mentioned is medical expenses. So in this example, let's say you are working for a company, they pay a portion of a procedure, or like we'll just use you got a procedure done and they pay for the majority of it, but there are unreimbursed expenses. So let's say there was $1,000 because I don't know, like there's something that went awry and there's $1,000 that you had to come out of pocket and pay for. You can use a Roth IRA for that money as long as it's qualified. And you can go and you can talk to maybe the processing team, the administration team, the back office, if you will, the accounting team, I guess is the proper term, to make sure that it is a qualified expense. But in general, the IRS allows you to reimburse yourself or pay for unreimbursed, like money that hasn't been reimbursed from the employer. You're able to reimburse yourself or pay for that medical expense. That's another tax benefit of the Roth IRA. And the last one, and I would probably say is one of the bigger ones, is that you can use up to $10,000 of your Roth IRA money for your first principal residence. Let's break that down. So the IRS says, listen, like I want the government, or I want the economy to be stimulated. Like we want the economy to do really well. And notice when the economy does really well, normally there's a thing called a leading indicator that is basically, their way of signaling a good economy. And one of those leading indicators happens to be people going and applying to build homes, or they're going and they're seeking out home ownership. That's a leading indicator which helps to stimulate the economy. So I'm giving you that background because you're probably wondering, okay, why does the government care that I own a home, and why are they giving us these tax benefits? That's the reason why. So the government says for your first home that you're going to be living in, that's first primary residence, you could take out $10,000 of the Roth IRA money after 5 years, of course, like following that rule. You can apply it to your first principal residence, and that's going to be tax-free and penalty-free. Huge benefit, especially if you are about to buy a new home and you need money for a down payment, or maybe your kid has a Roth IRA and they want to use that money for their first home, whatever it might be. That is a good way of going about funding that down payment. Now, a lot of people might say, okay, like $10,000 down payment isn't enough. Like who's going to, how is that going to help out if home prices are, $500,000, right? I'm not saying it's going to cover the entire down payment. It's going to help with the down payment so you don't have to pull that money from other places, right? So that's the third biggest tax benefit of a Roth IRA, and in my opinion, one of the biggest ones. Now, there are plenty other benefits of Roth IRAs that I'm not going to go and cover here because we'll be here all day. The numbers and covering the different nuances of them. But in terms of the big three, especially when it comes to debt, right? So mortgage debt, medical debt, college debt. That's the reason why I love it to cover these three for Roth IRAs, because for the vast majority of the people who are listening, that's probably where they're going to be able to avoid some debt, is by leveraging their Roth IRA tax efficiently in order to pay for those expenses. Now, I'll cover them again. You can withdraw your contributions at any time. That's number one. Number two, the IRS allows you to take the money out of your Roth IRA for qualified expenses after 5 years of making your first contribution, right? And that happens to be qualified college education expenses, and then medical expenses that have not been reimbursed by whoever you work for, and then $10,000 towards your first primary residence. And I should add, that is the lifetime limit. It's not every time you want to buy a home, you can take $10,000 out. They give you a one shot. Hey, here's $10,000 that you can pull from your Roth IRA, and you can use that for your first home, and don't ask for any more, is basically what the IRS says. So use those. And I'm curious, and you can write a review in order to tell me this, but how do you plan on using your Roth IRA going into the future? Are you going to use it for college, medical, maybe your first home? Maybe you can help out your kids in a way. How do you plan on using the tax benefits of a Roth IRA moving forward? So let me know in the reviews. Also, while you're there, please leave a 5 stars wherever you're going. You're listening to this podcast. Leave a 5-star, leave a review, and again, let me know how you plan on using a Roth IRA moving forward. With that, we will close. Thank you for joining this episode of the BetterWallet podcast. And as a reminder, if you are at a point in your life where you're saying, hey, I need to get my financial shit together. Like, I need to figure this out. The math isn't mathing. I made money last year. I don't know where it went. And I feel like the money is going all over the place. I really have no clue where it's actually going, but it's not going to things that I love. Please download my bulletproof checklist. It's in the bio or in my show notes. Click on that, download it, and then I'll give you a step-by-step process on how to put your money where it needs to be going, where you should be investing your money. And at the end, it actually gives you a rubric on where you're at in your financial journey. And then let me know how you scored. And then from there, let's work together to figure out how we can get you a higher score. So with that, we'll close. Thank you for listening to the BetterWallet podcast, and I'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for tuning in to the BetterWallet podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you found any value, we'd appreciate a rating and review.